cannot invent and pioneer if you cannot accept failure.
We wanted people that were insanely great at what they did.
Nobody was making any money at all. Most people thought the internet was going to be a fad.
Today, it's that time of the year. We're gonna look back at my 2024, and we're gonna talk about 2025, and some goals that I'm working through. Why I don't like goals, and some other things. So we'll dive in. So as we approach 2025, or as we're entering it, actually, I do like to take a moment to pause and reflect. I started doing this about 6 years ago, where I do an annual report, and it's a really good forcing function to reflect, to be appreciative, but also it's fun to go back and look at the other years just to see my mindset and what I thought was a problem that wasn't really that big of a deal. So it's pretty fun. So hopefully you're able to do this yourself. 2024 was a whirlwind. It was like we hit some fun milestones. There were setbacks. I feel like there was some personal growth and a heavy dose of balancing founder mode with being a girl dad. But again, fair warning, this podcast is going to be very reflective. It's almost a personal diary. We'll say journal. We don't want to say diary. To capture, man, the years that go by so fast. So maybe this will make my kids cringe, or maybe they'll listen down the road. So here we go. Let's start with the 2024 recap. So first with Growth Hit. It was about the year of consistency. I'm a big fan of themes. In 2023, it was about being efficient with our team and our margins. And 2024 was about consistency, predictable revenue, predictable income, predictable expenses. So we're laser focused on it. Sounds boring, but man, this can make or break a business. And it kind of worked, but not without some pains, right? So we were able to grow revenue by 27%, which we're not NVIDIA or anything, but for us, it was steady and sustainable. And we also maintained the profits that we wanted. We were able to pay out over $2 million to our incredible team of contractors and employees. And so for me, that's pretty cool to see that happen. Just as people are able to kind of work remotely, do the lifestyle design that they want, and hopefully make good money. And I have a new hack, and it's hiring badass working moms that don't want to go into the office, even ones that want to work at 80%, but don't tell anybody. But it wasn't all sunshine and Slack huddles. As we scale, we try and maintain quality and keep the culture going, right? And one thing I've realized as we're approaching 40 people, delegation is freaking hard. And I am constantly the biggest blocker of growth. They say the strength of the founders, the weakness of the company. And I see that being very real. The company kind of rises to my abilities, or it falls to my flaws. And there's a lot of them. So I'm constantly aware of this. And that's why I try and surround myself with a team that inspires me and honestly will shoot me straight. So as we cross 40 people this year, hopefully, I'm realizing that the biggest impact I can have is finding and motivating the right people. Also, we're in a market, digital marketing, that refuses to sit still, whether it's artificial intelligence, sneaky competitors. We are constantly innovating and disrupting how we work, how we talk to clients, how we fulfill clients. And at times it's exciting and energizing, and other times it is deflating and exhausting. Sometimes I think I'm a genius. Other times I'm like, I know I'm the reason we lost that deal. So for those reasons, I'm always looking for answers on the outside, and just trying to have that kind of growth mindset to always be learning. So here's a couple, we'll call it 5 things that drove my mindset in 2024. So first is this book, 10X is Easier Than 2X by Dan Sullivan. It's a framework for thinking bigger without working harder. And it's, if you look at your company, you can grow in a linear fashion, or what's a nonlinear way to grow. And by the way, it's actually easier. So that's something that's been eye-opening. And related to that is the book, Who Not How. And before you figure out how to solve something or how to hit your goals, they basically say stop and find the right who to own it, which has really kind of been a derivative of this idea of delegation. Like with Naval's book, I read it, I don't know, like 4 or 5 years ago. I reread it, but it talks about to grow, you need to be aware of business leverage, not just like debt and capital, but leverage in the sense of capital, people, or products that can grow with no marginal cost for replication. So that's something I look at is, am I focusing on high leverage activities like creating content, hiring people, how we're deploying resources? Um, Another one that I think about is this kind of mantra of concern over worry. Plan for tomorrow, but don't stress over tomorrow. I don't know about you, but I'll like be up in the middle of the night and I'll just do this doomsday scenario in my head, which is really not healthy as I'm not getting my 8 hours of REM sleep. So that's something that I think about. And one other one from Charlie Munger: never try to argue with someone unless you understand their perspective better than they do. As I get more experience and as I supposedly become this leader, I find myself talking less. I find myself wanting to listen and observe more and try to ask better questions rather than have better answers. And that quote from Munger's really inspired me. So yeah, that's a little bit of a recap on growth hit, but I think more in a more interesting way. Those are some ways my mindset has maybe changed or hopefully grown with those kind of 5 principles. So hopefully that's helpful. Okay, let's look at the 2024 recap for Neat. So we acquired Neat Sweatproof shirt brand about 18 months ago. And 2024 was the first year we got to run this thing. And so that was fun. It's like, okay, it's game time. Would it thrive or would I have to explain this very expensive experiment to my wife? And so it started strong. We did a photo shoot in Brooklyn. It all worked out. The model was amazing. Angela, our creative director, crushed it. And we updated the website and it worked. That's the good news. The bad news is that it also worked, meaning we sold out of product and we sold out of product before the summer. So we're going into peak season and we have no inventory. We ran into issues with our manufacturer on how to make the product. We looked for others and their old manufacturer was able to pull it off. Long story short, we didn't have product to sell during the peak season. That forced us to pivot fast. We ended up doing pre-orders. We were, testing launches and wait lists. And while it was painful at the time, it allowed us to create some muscles of pre-ordering. And then once we had product, things really just kind of took off and we're able to do well going into Q4. So all in all, we saw growth of 125%, which is really fun. But as we look ahead, we have some bigger goals that I'll talk about in a second. But yeah, it was fun. But yeah, I definitely learned I'm not good at manufacturing products. Some other kind of fun updates within my entrepreneurship group and just trying to get out there more and speaking is in January, I got to fly to Victoria with 6 other CEOs out of Seattle to have a 90-minute meeting with 2 billionaires or 1 billionaire, Andrew Wilkinson of Tiny and his partner, Chris Sparling. And so the reason why that was interesting, and I did a whole podcast on it that you can check out, is they started as an agency and all of a sudden they own 80 companies. They're a publicly traded company and it's at $1 billion valuation. And just to kind of, not only hear their story, but just hear how they asked us questions, the curiosity and getting to the core of things and the efficiency and how much they do leverage others was super fun. Another thing, I kind of got out a little bit more as far as doing more speaking gigs, and working on this e-product that we're calling the Growth Marketing Operating System. Because again, 6 years ago, I wrote a book, The Growth Marketer's Playbook, which I am proud of, but man, I've learned a lot since then. It feels a little stale, so I've been dying to make that update. So this year was the year I wanted to test the content. So I flew to Miami, flew to New York. I did a talk here in Seattle to just kind of pressure test the content. So I am super proud. I got a pretty good rating from the talk I did in Seattle. They said was the highest one of the year. But this podcast is not about tooting my horn. That is that we can move on from that. But anyway, I'll put a link to the product, the growth marketing operating system that we soft launched. But check it out if you're interested. But again, no pressure. With 2025, like goals and planning, it's funny. I look back at some of my goals that I even wrote about on my personal blog from past years, and they are so cringeworthy of what I thought I was going to do, just listing off everything. To where one, I don't know if those are even bearable to read anymore. But I've kind of approached it a little bit differently from an actual personal perspective. I'll talk about the goals I have for the two companies and then also for a personal level. But one, I actually kind of hate goals. You're just putting a lot of times an arbitrary number out there to either disappoint yourself, or if you hit it, you're like, okay, I'll just, push the goalpost back on what the next one should be. So for me, I kind of like doing this stoplight analysis of, green light, what do I want to keep doing? Red light, what do I want to stop doing? Yellow light, what's the new thing I want to add to my skill set or my daily habits? And so for me, I'm thinking less is better than more. And so I do feel good about a lot of the habits I have, from like, my wife gets all the credit, eating better, working out more, that's kind of like built in. But one habit I'm trying to add, and this one is so simple that I'm making it literally my one goal for the year, but I think it could be the most impactful thing. And it's implementing the one thing once a day. And what does that mean? It means before I start the week, what is the one thing I want to get accomplished that would make that week a success? And then the night before everything, what's the one thing I want to accomplish that next day to get something across the finish line? So why am I putting this what looks like simple task? It's because I get so caught up in the whirlwind of business where I'm in Slacks, I'm in emails, I'm responding, I'm putting out fires. All of a sudden it's 4:30, it's 5 o'clock. And I'm like, oh yeah, that huge goal, that huge thing that I think could impact the business. I didn't touch it. I didn't do it. So if I do the one thing and I actually calendar it, there might be a chance it actually gets done. And I feel like if I just make that my one goal this year, the rest of the dominoes will fall. Like that habit could unlock a lot of things. The other thing is, as life gets more and more complex with more companies and kid stuff, I have to fight with all my might and will to keep things simple and stop overcomplicating things. So there's like a pruning that I'm doing with, the emails I'm signed up to, with the task I'm responsible for, even my closet. My wife and I both, at the end of December, we're doing the purge. We're doing a purge, and we're starting with our closets, and then we're going to the kids' closets. And it was fun to kind of start the year light, right? So those are some things that I've been thinking through just in my approach for the year. But I do think it's worth having goals for the business, but a little bit different. For me, I like to have themes for the year. And I'll start with growth hit on a couple of the themes that we're working through. I'll just hit on two. So first is an AI first growth team. How are we not only like adapting to AI, how to use it into our tech stack, but how are we leaning in to hopefully being on the edge, the cutting edge, to be the first to launch things as an agency? And so that's something that has been kind of a rallying cry towards the end of 2024 that we're trying to amplify in 2025. We have another big theme and goal around this concept of riches and niches. I can't go into it in too much detail. Hopefully I will after we do our experiments. But it essentially means how we're refining our services to own a couple verticals or categories. And those, there are some quantifiable goals with that. But for me, it's more about getting the theme right. Why is that important? If I get the theme right, it becomes a game of telephone in the company where they understand the theme. It's memorable and it's something that they're excited about, and then the results will follow, as opposed to saying like, hey guys, the goal is to grow sales by 32% in Q2. People will forget that and they're not going to be fired up by it. But if I can get these themes to get excitement, get buy-in, then I think the action and results will follow. Another big goal of mine is from the book by Frank Slootman, Amp It Up, how I'm kind of amping up the intensity in what we're doing at our company without doing anything that breaks culture, but if anything, it enhances culture. Because I'm seeing that when there's a mission we have to all kind of work towards or row towards, or sometimes when we have our back against the wall, you see the A players that rise up, and it's a really amazing bonding experience. And sometimes that can be engineered. And I do think with all the innovation happening in AI, even though we're coming off a good year, it's like things are going to change real fast. So I'm not necessarily trying to go from peacetime CEO to wartime CEO, but that's something that I'm thinking through. I kind of hit on the personal side. One other thing I wanted to hit on is I heard this phrase. I forget where I heard it, but I just loved it. It's like, don't have New Year's resolutions, have New Year's reservations, and basically reserve the time for the year that will bring you joy. So on a professional side, I mentioned the one thing. Each week, I'm trying to reserve time to do that one thing. For me, it's trying to end meetings by 2:00 every day so I can have a runway of at least 3 hours to do something. Or in the mornings before I get just bombarded, how I can have an hour to focus on that one thing, and even having days with no meetings. On the personal side, I'm trying to, with each daughter, have kind of like dad-daughter dates where it's extended time together. And the other thing is just like, it brings us a lot of joy, but it's basically calendaring out all of our trips and travel. I feel like the anticipation of the trip is sometimes even better than the actual trip, and it gets the whole family fired up. So those are some things that I've been thinking about that I'm trying to implement in 2025. But yeah, I'm trying to make these goals and objectives a little bit less cringeworthy from previous years where I'm like, do 300 hit workouts, like, get BMI to this or that. It's for me, it's defaulting a little bit to simplicity and what one habit do I want to add for the year? Because if you can make something so simple, it's like, of course you're going to get it done. But if that simple thing can compound, then that's real exciting. But hopefully that's helpful. Not sure what you're doing for 2025 or what you have, or if you have thoughts on this, but would love to hear about it. But more to come on these updates. But hope you have a great start to the year.